With that said, before we do our roundtables, we have our next presenter coming to the stage, ladies and gentlemen. I was asking friends, hey, I really am interested. Everybody's struggling on Facebook. Everybody's struggling with ads. Who do you got that's really doing a great job, that's got some unique and inspiring ideas for how to do a better job running ads? And they said, you got to talk to Dara. So give it up for the New Yorker, Dara Denny, ladies and gentlemen. This is for you.
Hey everyone, I'm super excited to be talking with you all today. We're going to be talking all about the type of creative that is converting today in 2024 on Facebook ads and Meta ads. I'm also going to be showing you behind the scenes of some ad creative that I personally created or my teams created, and talk a little bit about how we actually produced that content. But the way that I always like to start these is I want to show you an ad creative that we tested. And I want you to guess which hook you think performed best. This was a UGC ad creative created for an old client of mine, Daily Harvest. And some of you are probably going to look at this and think, okay, there's 2 5x4s, there's 2 9x16s. I just couldn't find all the right aspect ratio. So based on the messaging hook alone, which one do you think converted the best? We have a few C's. Anyone for A? D? Okay. If you answered B, you're correct. This ad spent over $400,000, drove over, this is actually incorrect information, over 3,000 subscriptions. CTR, a little bit low, right? I think we might look at that CTR and think it's a little low for this brand. It was actually well within their range. Hook rate, 38%. Hold rate, 5%. Now, I'm going to show you this ad in its entirety in a second, but I want to talk a little bit about who I am. So my name is Dara Denny, and I'm a performance creative consultant, and I've been a full-time creator now, too, for the last year. But before that, I led creative and growth teams for the last 5 years, and I do live in Brooklyn, New York. I've had the amazing opportunity to work with some great brands. And something that I actually haven't announced publicly, is a little bit of a secret, is I'm actually working in-house right now with one of these brands, and likely going to be going full-time. Interestingly enough, I've done Facebook ads and performance creative for years. It'll be interesting for you guys to know that I'm actually on the brand marketing team right now, which is a really big change of pace, but I'm really enjoying thinking about brand in that much higher level. Some of you might know me, though, from my YouTube channel. I produce one long-form piece of content that's anywhere from 8 minutes to 16 minutes every single week, where I talk about Facebook ads and Facebook ads creative. But what some of you might not know about me, actually, is I'm a former founder myself. Several years ago, I co-founded the e-commerce brand NYC Train Sign, where I led all of the marketing and content efforts. But I want to go back, actually, to that ad. And if we can play this ad, I'd like to allow you guys to experience this in its entirety.
I only buy my smoothies from Daily Harvest. They have over 25 delicious and unique smoothies that are built on organic fruits and vegetables. It tastes like I'm having a milkshake in the morning, but it's actually really good stuff for my body. My favorites are the mint and cacao and the acai and cherry. All you have to do to try
Does that
Daily
voice
Harvest
sound
is
familiar
select your
to anyone?
items, and mine are always the smoothies, and pick your delivery date. Easy, tasty, healthy, and conveniently delivered. You gotta give Daily Harvest a try.
Yes, I produced this in my Brooklyn living room, also did the VO for that. I want to break down why this worked so well for this brand. Number one, that hook. And we split tested several different hooks for them. But I think the thing that really worked here, obviously the imagery, right? Number one, we look at that image and we think, this is kind of ugly, right? It doesn't really look like a delicious smoothie. That was definitely eye-catching. But the specificity in value messaging was something that we found was really important, and something that I still find is really important with ad creative. We joked in this ad about a $9 smoothie. Daily Harvest smoothies are $7. It is not a wildly better deal, but just the act of being more specific, calling out numbers in your hook, is absolutely something that's going to grab more attention. As far as the actual editing, this was super fast-paced and had a lot of dynamic shots. We open up top down, and then we immediately go top up to increase that hold rate. Also, every clip was about 1.5, 2 seconds long. So the pacing on this is super quick. When people are hooked at that point, we then immediately introduce different variety and flavors so that we could try and connect them with something that they might like to try. Then we sealed the deal with messaging pulled directly from reviews. Tastes like a milkshake, but is actually really good stuff for you, is something that I directly pulled from a website review. I begged this brand to let me put it in a hook, and they said no, which I think was actually something that I would have died to attest for this ad. Then finally, we have the soft CTA, right? Give it a try. We were asking people to do subscriptions at this point, kind of a big ask. But we had a soft ask in the ad, and we also give them a new value prop, which, hey, this is really easy stuff, which is really important to the consumer. So, this is just one ad, right? And I'm not going to be going through a ton of other UGC ads. They're kind of hard to talk over, right? But they're super important. But I did something special for you guys before I came in today. This is also the worst slide probably ever to be presented in a presentation like this. But I actually went through 20 brands' Facebook ads that I currently have access to from different industries, different monthly budgets. And I pulled out the top 3 converting creatives right now. Now, definitely take your cameras out and take a picture of this. I'll be giving this presentation to you guys afterwards as well. But I'm going to break down some of this data for you. Number 1, great UGC is still king. Emphasis on the great. Over 50% of top performers were UGC. And something that I actually found was really interesting and a big change I've seen in the industry recently is single testimonials are the top UGC format. I'm not seeing as much traction out of compilations and clips being clipped together. People are really looking for that singular creator experience. And brands who are spending over 7 figures per month are over-indexing a lot more on UGC. If you are spending that much, you need to understand the UGC that works for your brand. Let's talk about images. Over 70% of brands had images in their top performers, and headline images were the top performing format. And when I say a headline image, I mean simple product on a plain background with some type of punchy tagline. Those taglines, though, that actually get people to convert, pretty hard to figure out. And I'm going to go in and show you guys later on in this presentation how I figure those out. What I find that top brands are doing, once they find a format and messaging point that works for them, they split test the shit out of the messaging so that they can take that messaging and angles and iterate it into videos to make their video creative a lot more effective. Now, here's another scary slide. My boyfriend's a consultant. When I was going through this with him, he's like, you can't show this. But what I wanted to do, actually, is I wanted to take out a lot of the different hooks and messaging points that are really working right now. And they have a few things in common. Number 1, they're almost entirely problem-based or product-based. So if you're trying to think, okay, what type of messaging should I actually be using for my brand? Start with either focusing on the problem or focusing on the product. Another trend that I found that was really interesting right now, though, and I think it's interesting because it kind of ties back to what Ezra was talking about. A lot of things that are working right now actually go outside the self and are talking about family and are talking about some of those more deeper desires or something that's just a little bit more intimate. So I've been using a lot of family messaging actually in my hook right now to connect to the right people. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how I think about creative strategy, because I've led creative teams, I've led performance creative teams, and it is really hard to teach people how to make an amazing ad. And I've broken it down into 3 processes, or 3 big buckets. Number 1 is format. I feel like if you can teach a person 15 to 20 formats that convert on Facebook ads that they can identify, that's going to put them in a much better position to start conceptualizing on that ad creative. And when I say things like format, I mean, oh, your UGC ads, right? Maybe you'll have a testimonial ad, maybe a before and after ad, an us versus them. I find that it's very hard actually to teach people how to market at different parts of the funnel, but some formats lend themselves to being at different parts of the funnel, right? And us versus them is going to be a lot further down funnel, someone who's already considering you and your brand. Whereas UGC potentially is hitting that problem aware, but maybe not solution aware type of individual. The next part is that messaging. And I find that messaging is really the sweet spot. I also find it very hard to teach. But if you can categorize certain messaging tactics, then this is a really good way to also get people to identify and strategize what other types of messaging you can use in your ads. So here's a few messaging strategies, right? We have objection handling right here. Why are your products so expensive? This is an excellent creative that you can actually make to address that common objection. Next one I really like is negative marketing. I've tested this a lot. And if you lead with a negative sentiment over a positive one, that almost always will win out. So think about your top performing ad creative right now, turn it into a negative sentiment. I can almost guarantee you'll get more juice out of that creative over the next few months. Next, how-to educational content. This is actually the trend and the strategy I am having my brands think a lot about right now. How can you be content first and teach in your ad creative? These are the ad creatives that I find do not fatigue as much. If you can find a winner there, it's going to last a lot longer. And then finally, leaning into a core human desire, right? We could say, oh yeah, this is a great t-shirt, think about all the problems and benefits. But what people really want to feel in a t-shirt is, oh, I'm gonna be more attractive to someone, or they're gonna think something about me. So leaning into those core human desires is paramount with your messaging. Finally, then, imagery, right? I mean, there are several different types of imagery strategies that you can do that are really impactful. I often find, when I teach brands and agencies about creative strategy, they find it's interesting that I leave the imagery to the last. I mean, that's really because the format and messaging are the points that I think that are actually, that's actually what's moving the needle. But there are some imagery strategies that you can do, right? You can do something that's a little oddly satisfying, do something that's on a loop. Also, if you have a product-based business showing multiple products and different color SKUs, that's something that can work really well. And then this awkward last video right here, if you can lean into the taboo in some ways, that's something that I find always has won as well. Now, for the rest of this conversation, I'm actually going to go in on a few of these formats, right? Because the idea here is that if you can learn the formats and if you can teach your team the major formats, then that's something that they're going to be able to walk away from and it's a lot more actionable. But I have another pop quiz for you guys. This is another ad that my team made. And interestingly enough, one was made without any research, and another was made with a lot of in-depth research. So this may be giving it away a little bit, but anyone think they know which one was the winner? Yeah, everyone's gonna say B for that one, right? Now, the fun thing that I always love pointing out for A, which was the one that didn't win, is this was started off thinking about the imagery first. The creative strategist was like, oh, I'm gonna look through the top, the top performing images that worked on the ads. And then they took the feature callouts that were directly from the website. What we learned when we actually did more of the in-depth research was people were using this swimsuit for exercise. They were using it for inside. So the fact that we showed strong sun protection did not matter at all, because that was a benefit that people weren't even interested in. But this features benefit call out is something that, I've seen work again and again for brands. And the way that I'm saying, hey, the way that we can take this to the next level is we have to include more testimonials on top of these as well. And when I'm going through and actually finding the features benefits that we're going to be utilizing, I'm running hundreds of reviews through ChatGPT, and I'm having it pull out the benefits and features that are most impactful for people. Again, it's really about figuring out what is going to connect most with your consumer, and in-depth research is the thing that does this. Another trend that we see here, right, is a lot of these ads are mentioning family members, which again is another trend that I'm seeing right now that's working really well. This was actually a creative test that I made for the Black Tux, and I wanted to show this because this is how I'm actually doing creative testing right now. So if I'm starting from, okay, we're gonna be doing a format, we're not just going to be split testing certain messaging points using the same image. I want to create the best individual creative that I can. So when I was going through and figuring out what type of golden nugget reviews I could find and what type of benefits were most important to people, you know, there was this idea of feeling like James Bond that kept on coming up again and again. And there were also some people that ended up liking the suit so much that they bought it. The one, though, that was the winner on this was not your dad's old suit, which I would not have thrown money, which I would not have based money on. But you know, that's why we want to try having as much diversity now in the creatives that we're showcasing and testing. Now, I always like showing this slide too, because this idea of a features benefit callout is nothing new. This is actually an old Ogilvy ad from the print era. And what he said was that there were two main formats that he used for all of his ad creative. This was one, and the reason why he said he always used these callouts is because people were 5 times more likely to recall the information when presented like this. So that's why, you know, it's interesting to see that this is still a format that's converting, even though it's on social media and in the digital era. Now, the second format is something like this, and we're gonna dive into a creative that has evolved from this type of ad. And this is what I like to call a golden nugget review. Now, golden nugget reviews are those testimonials that are so special that they can't possibly be faked, right? They're the times when you think that, wow, you know, your customer might be a copywriter because they say something that is incredibly specific or shows a really wild transformation, makes for really great ad creative. And a fun fact too, you can actually run your reviews through a GBT and ask for golden nugget reviews to be extracted, and you can find that automatically. Now, what is not a golden review, right? I think that we've seen these type of ads all the time. Maybe we've ran them ourselves. Best teas ever made. Major upgrade, great fit, looks great, hands down the best shampoo ever. Like, yeah, like when you get these as an entrepreneur, these reviews, you're like, ah, this is awesome. But these aren't impactful as far as it is for ad creative, right? Now, what I was talking about earlier with headline ads, I actually find that it's very, very hard for brands to start with coming up with an amazing tagline, but it's actually a lot easier for them to find those golden nugget reviews that will eventually become these type of ads. So if you can first test out golden nugget reviews that eventually turn into more of these headline ads because you saw success from them, this is the kind of thing that I see is very simple, but can convert pretty well. Founder story ad. Lots of founders in here. How many of you guys have done a founder's ad? A number of you. This is another test that I have for you guys. So I sat down with Lulu and did an hour-and-a-half long interview. We probably tested over 50 different hooks for this creative. This creative ended up being the top performer for over a year and a half. Which hook do you think performed the best? A, B, C, or D? I hear a few A's, a few B's. D, a number of D's, yes. D was the correct one. Now, again, we split tested so many different types of hooks for this. I also thought it was interesting for this one. We tested several different imagery points too, showing her face, some not showing her face. But there was something about this top-down image, this product-first image that ended up working really well for her. And like I said, you know, this was an all-day shoot. I think sometimes when I'm working with founders, they want to have a script written for them. Maybe they'll have 4 or 5 different hooks to test. But I've done this process now with about 10 brands where we'll sit down with the founder, we'll have an hour-long interview, and we'll wait to see what type of cream rises to the top, getting them comfortable, getting them in their zone, just getting them talking about their business and the why of their business. Time and time again, I find that when you actually sit down and do this more in-depth interview style for founders ads, this is what tends to convert for the long term. But you don't have to jump right into these in-depth interviews, right? You can start off by doing something that's a little bit more UGC oriented. We have Zach Stuck right here, who's simply walking through his warehouse and talking about the brand. I know the people from Array, they work with Smart Marketer. They've sat down and done interviews as well. And that content, I've heard, has done pretty well for them too. And I also think it's really interesting for those founders that end up becoming creators and really being the forefront of their brand. And I think that a lot of founders shy away from that, but as Gen Z and Gen Alpha are starting to get more buying power, I think that's something that they're gonna demand more, is seeing the behind the scenes of these brands. I think it's even interesting when we look at, follower accounts on TikTok, for instance. Love Wellness has 88K followers, while the founder has almost 2 to 3 times that. And I think that's because that founder experience is incredibly important to people, and it is only going to be more important as, again, Gen Alpha and Gen Z start progressing and gaining more wealth. Some other types of founder formats, you don't have to go right into video. I've seen it perform pretty well just doing image-based. And then we have this slideshow right on the side here, right? This was made from simply images from the founder, as well as some B-roll stock footage that we used. This ended up being a top performing ad creative for over a year, which was this is a really easy way to get your founder to see the value in telling more of their story. So really the thing that it's gonna be required on the upfront of that is to write out that story and then having that show up here. I'll say for this brand particularly, this is something that worked a lot better when targeting demographics 45, 55 plus, because they're gonna be more likely to read through that. Another brand that does these founders ads really, really well, Oats Overnight. A big trend I see in general right now is people really pulling behind the curtain and showing more of that warehouse, that more behind the scenes scenery, and also packaging up certain orders is something that I've seen work really well too. So there's really no, there's no limit to how many different formats you can have in this founder style ad. Statistics. Okay, if I was giving this presentation 2-3 months ago, I'd probably say something like, yeah, if you show numbers in your ad creative, it's gonna speak to the logical part of the brain, and people are gonna be more likely to buy because you're giving them a logical reason to say yes. I think the reason really why these statistic ads work actually is because they showcase the before and after experience in a slightly different format. Now, when I'm working with brands who want to try into this statistic types advertising, I guide them to think more about the transformation of that when using that statistic, as opposed to something that's a little bit more fact-based, but more on that fact-based thing in a second. This is another top performing ad by Beekman 1802. And number one, I really love the sort of alliteration that they have here. And I think the thing that stood out and is really interesting is that 5 mushrooms point, right? This is eye cream. And I know that it's probably very 2024 for there to be mushrooms kind of in everything. But when I saw this, that was definitely something that then we saw popping up in the ad comments again and again. People were like, wait, why is there mushrooms in this? And it was something that we saw was really working. Let's go back to that Ogilvy ad, right? So what's interesting about this type of ad is it's all fact-based around the product. So at 60 miles per hour, the loudest noise in this new Rolls-Royce comes from the electric clock. What types of facts and figures can you tell about your brand or your product that would be really interesting for your consumer? These type of ads have really converted well across the board. We have another one from Beekman 1802, and I really like this one from Hum as well. Reduces bloating up to 2 inches after 1 use. So again, that specificity in messaging, something we talked about with the Daily Harvest ad, is something that works again and again. When I show this Rolls-Royce ad, though, I get people that are really freaked out because they're like, whoa, that's way too much text. And even though Facebook doesn't have the 25% text rule anymore, people see this and they're thinking, it doesn't apply. Interestingly enough, though, I'm seeing traction from more of these text-based only ads. And I think that this is something that's really actionable and easy for brands to try as a new creative format. I think the most popular one here, right, is this Adams ad. They're not cheap, and it goes through the list of reasons why they're not cheap. Another objection handling ad. Interestingly enough, though, with these text-based ads, there's several different formats you can go with it. This one by Sawgrass Rods was one of their top performers. It was literally a screenshot that they used from their CX team. So really think about what types of platforms and what types of, where your customer hangs out and how you can manipulate that format to show up for them so that you're delivering that right message. Final ad creative I want to talk about, educational ads. Now, this ad that Lulu made is one of my favorite ads because she's literally going through different types of Chinese herbs and talking about what type of ailments they help heal. At no point does she mention the brand, and it's not until like second 15 that she mentions the product at all. So this is incredibly education forward. This is really a content-first approach to developing ad creative that we're starting to see a lot more. Now, the reason why I encourage brands to do this and why it ends up working longer and not fatiguing is because you're going up the funnels of awareness, right? When you are doing educational-based content, you are focusing on the stages that are problem-aware and potentially even unaware through your education. And this is why they're not going to fatigue out as quickly, too, because you're literally opening that content up to a much bigger market. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, I have like a product-based brand, maybe it's not gonna be right for me. You can even make educational content for something as simple as apparel. How to measure your jeans properly, right? The thirst for information and education across, some of you guys know Barry. The thirst for education and information about products and brands, there we go, yeah. That's a real education, right? We should have, that kind of stuff. There are 2 main types of ways that I see brands can do educational-based content. This right here is like a listicle content. It's like a BuzzFeed listicle, right? So you're going through different types of points about your brand or your product. It can also be image-based too. So you don't have to just think about video when creating more educational-based content. So I call this the educational knowledge share. The next type of educational format is a tutorial. I think that's a lot easier to understand. You're gonna teach your customer how to do something. It's really popular in the beauty and skincare industries and can really be followed through a step-by-step format. Now guys, I don't know how we made it through. We saw like well over 100 ads, but that's all that I have for you today. I hope that you guys found some ad creative that you want to test for your brands. Again, I launch one video every single week on my YouTube channel. I have tons of resources for your teams. And I'll be here all today, all tomorrow. I'd be so happy to look over some of your creatives or peek into your ad accounts. I know some of you know me more on the Facebook ad structure side. So I'm excited to be here and to jam with you guys over the next few days. Thanks.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks.
That was awesome. Good job. Thank you.
Yeah.